Hello everyone, this is my analysis of the film Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, which was written and directed by Martin McDonagh. For this analysis I will mainly be focusing on the form of the film. For instance, the mise-en-scene, cinematography and editing will all be areas of focus. However, I will probably go into some detail regarding the narrative. Let's start with story. The story revolves around Mildred Hayes, who after the death of her daughter makes an attempt to keep the case in the public eye. She does this by installing 3 billboards detailing one such element of the crime. As it goes, no one agrees with her decision to state specific details of either the crime or the investigation in a public format, and as such things slowly start to escalate into violence. So, from my own analysis of the film, there are 3 main characters, the first of which is Mildred. Then there is both Chief Willoughby and Dixon. For the sake of the presentation, I will be referring only to Mildred and Dixon as persons of interest, as I personally saw the most clear comparison of character to be made between them. But I'll get back to that. The first clip we are going to analyse is more or less what you would call the inciting incident, in which Mildred enters the Ebbing advertising offices to rent out the 3 billboards. In this scene there are 31 cuts averaging at around 3 to 5 seconds, however I would like the chance to take you back just a little before this. This is where I believe we should really be paying attention to the mise-en-scene. In the opening of the film we are shown the 3 billboards from various vantage points. The tone is, for a lack of a better word, bleak. The setting is intentionally ominous and the use of non-diegetic soundtrack are what ultimately solidifies the tone of the scene. As an audience, we understand these billboards are the centre of a story that is tragic by nature. This is the perfect prelude to the next series of events. Once the introduction of the film has concluded, we are placed in the same setting as before. However, time appears to have changed. It is at this point we are introduced to Mildred as she drives past the 3 billboards. The moment she pulls up on the side of the road and reverses, it becomes clear that an idea has been planted in her head. However, the audience is left to remain ignorant. Once she swiftly pulls away, coupled with the soundtrack that we are given the notion that she is determined to make this idea into a personal goal. This becomes evident the second time we see Mildred. We are introduced to a very different character. She has arrived at the advertising desk and her physical presence has changed. Her clothing has been replaced with these blue overalls and her hair has been cut much shorter. But moreover, what I wanted to point out was the way she physically represented her motivations without saying a word, and also how the framing helped aid this performance. I didn't originally pick this up, but when she stops at the door to the advertising offices, she stops at an unusual angle. She isn't looking through the door, she is rather looking at the reflection in the glass. She is on the left-hand side of the screen, which is where our natural attention is directed. She is the primary subject of the scene. The shot is in slow motion and gives us plenty of time to trace where she is looking. The police station is what we naturally end up looking at ourselves. Another point is what she is wearing. In the same shot, we get the first glimpse of her new physical presence. The fact that her overalls are blue suggests to me that she has taken on a more authoritative persona, much like the police that she observes in the reflection of the glass.
You read Welby?
Yes, ma'am. How may I help you?
I hear there's
Right
2
from the
billboards
onset, her character is not only determined, but she is also very assertive. A good number of these shots were taken from a low angle to put Mildred in a position of power over Welby. There are only a handful of shots in this section of the scene that have active movement beyond natural handheld camera shake as a means to progress the story or get a point across. For instance here, I think a happy mistake happened. Welby's head moves slightly too far over into Mildred's space and so the camera moves. However, this seems to happen just at the right time for the characters to start to understand one another. I say that because only a short time passes before the visual dynamics change. She moves over to his side of the desk and hands him the funds for the billboards. Once the transaction begins, Mildred's physical attention turns to the view of the police station, her back turned to Welby. The visual relationship between the two evens out, putting Welby almost to the same power as Mildred. What I personally took away from the mise-en-scene when it comes to the narrative is that a level of trust has been formed. But it is a fragile relationship that if broken will result in damaging effects, mostly for Welby. Notice how these few shots near the end of the scene paint a picture of Mildred. Taking away what we already know of her motivations, these two shots say everything we need to know. When she helps the cockroach off its back, the sign for the police station is clearly visible in the background. What this could be saying is that she is doing with her own authority what the local police should have been doing with their daughter's case. Or it could merely be an illustration of her empathy towards an insignificant living thing. Either way, we now see Mildred to be something more than the hostile woman that originally stormed into the officers ready for confrontation. Which, in contrast with the character from the second scene we are going to analyse, is something closely resembling the act of a saint. Much like Mildred, Dixon enters those same officers ready for confrontation. However, unlike Mildred, it is fueled by pure anger after the death of Chief Willoughby. And as you can see, the way in which he responds to his current situation is a far cry from that of Mildred, both of which feel they have been the victims of injustice. This is ironically where I see the most obvious similarities between them. In reality, they are very similar to the way they act to said injustice. They both are the ones that are inclined to use physical aggression as a means to get their point across. This, in essence, is the polar opposite of the first scene in a lot of ways. From the characters to the filming techniques. Where the first scene was calculated in the sense they placed specific characters in specific positions to illustrate their individual standing in the context of the narrative, this scene is made up entirely of one shot, which I will mention they went through a lot of trouble and a lot of planning to achieve, focusing only on key elements. Now here, as Dixon makes his way up these steps, the focus has been put onto the weapon that Dixon happens to be carrying. Needless to say, he means business, yes. However, now he has changed the way he is handling the gun, suggesting that he has rethought his plans from lethal to slightly less lethal. I also wanted to talk a little on the way the filmmaker decided to use the camera and a non-diegetic sound to illustrate the emotional state of a character. By using the handheld approach, they made an obvious statement on Dixon's character. He is psychologically unhinged. In comparison to Mildred in the previous scene, she was in control of both herself and the discussion she was having with Welby, and so the movement of the camera was smooth. Dixon's emotional state is volatile, and so the camera has been agitated. I think what was happening in this scene was the very lowest point in Dixon's role. He not only showed a lack of intellectual stability, but he also made it clear that his understanding of ethics was not only lacking, but was also dangerously distorted. In later scenes, Mildred is seen to be acting out in a similar way.
Fuck 'em.
The movement of the camera agitated due to her emotional state. And also, like Dixon, there was also a similar use of the non-diegetic soundtrack. This to me is proof they are not far apart from one another, and that they are both capable of acting on bad judgment. This to me is a very clever manipulation, not only because of the technical aspects of the filmmaking, but also from a storytelling perspective. The film is uncommon in the sense that it allows a lot to be left unsaid, often allowing us to make up our own minds on the actions carried out over the course of the film. When it comes to Mildred and Dixon, the parallel between their emotional reasoning, even though they could not be further apart in personality, is what makes this film great. No one person in this film is that perfect untouchable moral figure as with the case of most Marvel movies, and that is where the real story is here, in the human imperfections of every character, including and especially the ones I have not mentioned. But one of the most defining features of the film for me is simply the unpredictability of it. Not only did the film transcend a traditional three-act structure or Sid Field's paradigm to further add to the complexity of the material, but they gave us layer after layer of strong, emotionally resonant content. In terms of the structure of the story itself, to the characters, to the underlying narrative, each element was added with a great respect for the audience's intellect. For that reason alone, I have to add praise for the film, as it is more than likely going to go down right next to Fargo, No Country for Old Men, The Shawshank Redemption and The Green Mile as being one of the greats in film history. So, thank you for watching my little analysis here. I hope to bring you more videos like this in the coming months. I may even be sharing my own work as I progress in my studies at SAE Byron Bay. Please, if you like this video, like and subscribe, and if you have any suggestions, please feel free to comment in the comment section below, or follow me on social media. I'll put a link in the description below, and I look forward to hearing from you. Have a good day. Tyler O'B Wallis has left the building.
Put an end to shit, you fucking retard. This is just a fucking start. Why don't you put that on your Good Morning Missouri fucking wake-up broadcast, bitch?